We go. I believe this is recording, and welcome and hello to the XStreamed chat show here on the XStreamed Improv XStreamed YouTube channel, podcast channels, all of the places where you get anything from Extreme Improv. My name is David Pustansky, and I'm very excited because we have Mark Phoenix as our guest today. I say our guest, it's just me here, but as my guest today. How are you doing, Mark?
All right. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. Now, we've obviously had you on the channel with your company, like doing guest shows in the Extreme Improv festivals and things a few times over the last couple of years. So now this is like even though we kind of end up doing a little bit of a chat after these, but this is like the first proper chat, as it were, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's been. Let's connect. Let's find out a little bit about each other.
Absolutely. So obviously we've had you on with third person theatre. Shall we start there? Tell us a little bit and tell the watchers, the listeners, a little bit about third person theatre, the kind of stuff you do, because the thing that's always impressed me is that you do innovative stuff online, and I'm sure that extends in other places as well.
Yeah, so basically I've worked out a way of putting the Meisner acting theory that I did some training in with Improv, because for me they're both about the other person.
Yeah.
And so if you focus on that, because I don't like indulgent acting and me stuff. So if you're working on the other person, these things just slot together. So it's taken me, I don't know, 20 odd years since my first idea of how the hell can we put these things together to iron out lots of problems, or to, as you keep developing and keep exploring, there are new problems. And for me, it's like, okay, what's a new solution? So every time I see a new play or a new style, it's like I now always see it in terms of improvising. So when I see I go to see a play, it's written, it's directed, it's organised, it's rehearsed, but I see it as a piece of improv.
Yeah.
And my critique of it is, if I was improvising this, what's wrong with this? And then how would I do that style? So if you have four people just sitting on a chair doing a Sarah Kane type of thing, how can I put that into theatre? Yeah. How can I make improv work on that level? So when the pandemic came along, it's the thing, how do I make this work now that we're on Zoom? So there's a much wider reach. We're going we've got people all around the world. I think my style is a little bit, I don't know, it's the people who like it, it's a sort of a taste thing. The people who like it really get addicted to it. But a lot of people are going, oh, this isn't for me. I prefer comedy and whatever. So most of the improv stuff that I see is comic based. So I'm basically trying to do serious plays. So once the pandemic came along, we're online. It became, can we do improvised movies?
Yeah.
So my whole teaching process then was, okay, let's think about the lighting. Let's think about where you place yourself on camera. Let's think about doing activities. I've seen crazy stuff online with people. They're trying to do some more dramatic improv, but because they've had that comic training, I've seen them videoing themselves in their own kitchen and yet miming a glass of water. And it's like, tap and the glass is just there.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, why don't you just do the obvious thing, get a real glass of water? So, and for me, this is, I suppose, my taste is that if you do stuff for real, physically, it helps the audience, convince the audience that what you're feeling is real. So
for me, there's always the barrier of making sure the audience are on the same page with what you're doing. That because obviously, if you teach a lot of improv, you'll know that like your object work is important. And if you just think, all right, that's when I had the water, and it's like, well, they didn't see that because you need to put in more detail. It's still, even if you're really, really good at object work, it's still something that, okay, that's good. Everyone could see that, but they can literally see this, and so it strips away another barrier.
Yeah, and for me, it's just something I was doing last night. I was just taught someone, and as someone who's done some of my work before was coming back to another class full of beginners. So he happened to have a bottle of water in the middle of this scene, and so much of the information was conveyed by it. So I think if he was this nervous person. I think the scene sort of became, because we didn't know where it was going when it started, it became trying to reconnect with an old girlfriend or something, or reconnect with someone that he fancied, but he didn't know whether she fancied him. And he, in his nervousness, he drank, and then he carried on because he was still nervous. And you just see him keeping on guzzling the water. And I don't think if you were miming that, you'd think to keep doing it. There's something about, you got the glass, and I'll do a drink of water. And therefore, he didn't need to say anything. His whole emotional state was conveyed through the way that he drank a bottle of water, because the water was real, the emotion was real. The audience didn't need lines or anything. So for me, that's sort of my taste, as it were. So
yeah. On that, so dramatic improv, I completely agree. There's an awful lot of people feel that improv and comedy are almost synonyms for each other. And I think, like, my personal take on it is, when it comes to dramatic improv, I think it's generally a harder and perhaps takes more discipline to achieve, for the reason that when you watch so much improv, short form, long form, or whatever, people very quickly can end up going to like absurdist ideas, to things that are very fantastical, and keeping some, and that doesn't mean that can't be dramatic, but to keep something that seems grounded and purposely not trying to just be zany and comedic, I think is it takes a lot more skill, because even just in terms of, if you're doing a comedy and continuity goes a bit squiffy, you can get away with it. But if it's dramatic, there's all of these things where you have to be, in my opinion, a lot more on the ball to make sure this is the boundaries of the universe we live in. These are the relationships we set up, and rewarding the audience for the continuity and everything else that makes it seem not comedic.
Yeah, for me, there's something when I teach comic improv. One of the first things I put in the advertising blurb is I'm expecting bravery.
Yeah.
So, and then when I do the serious stuff, I say I'm expecting you have done the comic stuff, so therefore bravery is already expected. But now I'm expecting sensitivity. So there's something now. The bravery isn't just falling over on the banana skin. The bravery is revealing some personal vulnerability.
Yeah.
The ability to cry or something that that's a harder thing to win. But I really enjoy the idea that I can make the audience cry with improv.
Yeah.
Or make them feel anything. I think the only thing I don't want the audience to feel is that horrible when they put their hands on the face and they're so embarrassed for the actor.
Yeah.
Going, why is the actor on stage doing this? Oh, please, I don't want to watch this. That's the only feeling I don't want the audience to have. So, but we can scare them, we can make them cry, we can make them laugh. We could, it's, for me, it's like the richness of going to the theatre. And I suppose in a way, why are you doing improv? Why not do straight plays? I think in straight plays, there's a lack of presence. There's a lack of, for me, I want more improvisation within the acting, even on a scripted piece, because a lot of it it's dead. I don't know whether it's misquoting or something. I don't know whether it was Oscar Wilde said that rehearsal is putting the coffin back into the hearse.
Wow, yeah.
So, and I was thinking, there is something. Although I have been, in my theatre life, I've been involved in some brilliant rehearsals with some incredibly creative people. But I think that idea that just repetition of a symphony, you just go, now it's dead. When you do it in front of an audience, the audience want to be live and they're connecting in the moment. And yesterday's performance shouldn't be what you're trying to repeat today.
Yeah.
Today's performance today, and that's why I feel like I want more improvisation or more improvisational stuff happening within plays, and the opposite thing, I think I want more of the feeling and more of that audience, taking the audience along on a really emotional journey, put that into the improv. So that's why I'm skating this line, and I suppose. You're talking about absurdism and things. I really quite like it, especially when we're in our black box theatre, that we can go into Pinteresque or Beckett-esque type of theatre, because it's not about the setting of the world, it's about the humanity within it. Yeah. So for me, when it's with a comedy improv, I think people just become I don't know, they become bunny rabbits. Someone was saying to me on an improv thing, I was abroad somewhere, and someone said, oh, I don't want to do acting type of thing because I want to be different in everything I do. But what I see is, okay, you're a bunny rabbit in this scene, you're a wardrobe in this scene, but you're still arrogant. You're an arrogant bunny rabbit, you're an arrogant wardrobe, you're an arrogant... And it means, like, well, is that variety? Is that really the variety you're talking about? Because you're a bunny rabbit? So for me, it's like watching Beckett. If two characters in dustbins or two heads are buried in you're buried in sand, two people waiting for Godot, it's the humanity. And if I can do that with improv, I don't know, that excites me to think, I don't know, a long-term ambition. Let's really challenge the National Theatre, because I've seen some absolute dead theatre, from Peter Brook's dead theatre stuff. And it'd be great to sort of go, okay, we'll come in your lobby, you tell us how many actors we want, and we will improvise a play. And I want it to be better than the stuff you've been rehearsing with your stars for months.
Wow.
If we can get to that sort of quality.
Yeah, I mean, that is the challenge. Okay, so what do you see as the hurdles to reaching that?
One I made from Access from their point of view, because I know that Improbable did some improv at the National Theatre. And I went to see one, and it's not the best format, the one that they chose, which is sort of getting someone from the audience who's quite famous who will tell their life story, and then the improvisers act around it and act scenes from it. But I'm more interested in just when the person told their original life story.
Yeah.
And it feels like, so maybe, and I don't know whether because of that, the improv sort of hasn't been welcomed on stage anywhere like that again. And then the other thing, I suppose, is in terms of audiences, the hurdle of trying to get people to get on board with my taste. There's something to, if you want a theatre experience, or why are we going to improvisation? If we want an improvisation experience, why isn't it comedy?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I get that audience to see?
I think we're still at like a kind of weird phase where obviously more people than ever before are familiar with improv or improv. It's interesting you say improv. Because obviously I'm extreme improv. I'm very much in the habit of saying improv, which I know is more of like the American way of saying it. But what was I going to say? More people now know what it is, but it's still something where so many people don't know what it is at all. And if they do know what it is, they're familiar with short form. And it's funny, I've literally just been writing, not to plug an article that I'm doing, but an article where I sort of say about the fact that people know what short form is, but actually an improvised play should be the easier thing. Yeah, it's a play, but they make it up without a script. But most people, when they visualise improv, it's a game and you're going to be hopping around or speaking in questions, and that's what people understand, even though that is, to me, is a harder concept to start explaining. Well, there are games, but it's acting. It's not a game show, it's an acting show, but it's this weird thing, whereas just saying it's a play without a script, done.
Yeah.
I
think it's because of things like Whose Line Is It Anyway? I think that's become such a big thing that people in many countries have seen it, and it's almost, that's what you do. Oh, it's like Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
And people go, oh, okay, I get it. Therefore you don't have to explain. I've seen people do these funny comic things. And I think because of the American system, as it were, a lot of people get into improv in order to get onto Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
in order
I can
to
imagine.
make into their comedy thing. And you can see that what they do improvisation to start with. So any of the improvisations that have worked in an evening show, they then script and then make it into a sketch.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's become the American route. And because there's so many people wanting to do that, they can then hold people back and make them do hundreds and hundreds of classes before they're advanced enough to perform on stage with them, therefore making huge amounts of money out of all these want-to-be people. And then that idea of how you teach improv, or what improvisation is, I think that's spread worldwide. But I'd like to, because improvisation isn't just about, isn't acting. There's music, there's jazz, there's dance improvisation. And I think there's lots of cultures. I mean, the Italian Commedia dell'arte was their whole theatre style was sort of an improvised thing in masks. and I'm sure I don't know enough, but I'm sure like there must be some African sort of improvisation, some core of something where they learn something and whatever their improvisation is. And Buto from Japan or whatever, that people have found really different ways, and yet somehow we just go, oh, it's this style of this is improvisation is this thing that's come from America somehow, or from our local home ground thing from Keith Johnson and folk. And I've been lucky enough to work with all his team over time. Right. I did classes with Ben Benison. John Muirhead taught me at the City Lit with stuff. Rick Morgan I was in a play with, and I count Roddy Maud Roxby as a mate. I've performed with him, and I don't know, it's this lovable sort of guy. I mean, these guys are, I don't know, they're all in the 90s or whatever, if they're still alive, type of thing. So yeah, but that to have that, I don't know. I went to Roddy's 70th birthday, and he was still the funniest person in the whole space. Yeah. He was just so entertaining. He was this child. And it's just amazing, this 70-year-old man. My dad was the same, but my dad was an old man. Yeah. Same age. But this guy is my friend, and he's this childishness, this, I mean, not ish, but childlikeness, that the way his brain works. And when I see new improvisers come along, I still go, you're still not as good as this guy.
Yeah. Does an improviser's brain work differently, do you think?
I think with training, yeah, I think it's, and certainly, I don't know, if it adapts into your life, and I suppose it's what else competes with your life, because I know improvisation changes a lot of people. Yeah. They get into it, and it really makes them reevaluate a lot in their lives. But if they still do their very dead-end job, then they've got, I don't know, for me, they've got that is still making them think in a classical way of thinking. I think if you drop it and you drop that normal thing and you go, right, I'm now going to improvise and the rest of the world, or, I'm going to act, you're then in this creative space, which can be quite scary because you no money coming in. Yeah. but then you're in this space of your mind is, it's alive. There's something about being present, and new ideas and things are continuing.
I think it's, for me, it's like always being able to see possibilities in things. You see something, and some people might see a cup is a cup, but we'll see a cup, and it's like, well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be reshaped, it could be anything, And I think we just see possibilities in things, and just even then in conversation, someone that does a lot of improv, it'll just be do I give the normal answer, or do I give one of these other 3 or 4 ideas which is instantly come into your head at the same time?
Yeah, and for me, it's stories that come, hundreds. I don't know whether it becomes down to me, because I try to spread some of my concepts with, how do you do dramatic improv? But a lot of people will say, but I can't think the way that you think. So there's something, when I see a scene, when I see 2 people just really reacting, I've immediately got a story. I'll immediately use whatever, and they go, oh, I didn't see that. And I want to train people to see that more, but I don't know whether that's down to me in terms of what my experience. But yeah, whenever I'm just looking for stories everywhere. So, traveling by tube or bus is great, because I'm just going, I've just got all these relationships going on. I'm writing all these stories in my head, and therefore, your brain is. And I think my interest as well is talking the brain. I've got interested in the brain. Yeah. Because I think.
In what way, Mark?
In terms of neuroscience, one is it's who are we? What makes me me? That whole thing of consciousness and your own individuality, because as an actor you're trying to be somebody else, but also as a teacher you're trying to convey to somebody else what it's like to try to put that hat on, as it were. So what makes me me? And I think a lot of the problems with the acting that I see is because Stanislavski was based on Freud. And we now know Freud is, he made it all up. It was all, a lot of it is just pretentious hogwash. And now we've got MRIs, and, we know a lot more about neuroscience. We've got to have another way of looking at the way that we are thinking, how emotions affect us, what our brain is doing, rather than sort of this sort of amateur psychology that people use in their drama training, which I think, and I go, come on, guys, it's been 100 years, and there's got to be, well, there's many more techniques now.
Okay, so this is
still do 100-year-old technique.
This is super fascinating. So what conclusions have you drawn? What makes you you?
Well, I think from, I don't know, that the way we've evolved from monkey to man is because our society's got bigger, and we've had to understand how we fit in to bigger groups of beasts, and that reading, for me, that emotional reading of other people's faces, of how to try and work out what they're feeling, how you fit in, how you don't upset somebody, how you've got all these status games going on. How do you see in a monkey tribe, they still go through fights when there's 20 of them. Yeah. How do we get to walking down Oxford Street, hundreds of thousands of people, I don't know, walking up down these streets, and there's no fights going on? People just avoid each other and move around each other, and everyone gets on in this really cooperative way. So although there are wars and things, it's really interesting how, as an animal, how cooperative we've become, because I think, how do we fit in? So for me, the brain developed because of emotional reading.
Okay, so just to throw something, look, if I just say something random, and if you're more learned on this and I say something that's completely nonsense, just tell me something. So that makes me think, like, well, ants have, like, a society. So does that mean in some regard to other creatures, beasts or whatever, that can coexist and cooperate for continued peace and harmony around themselves? Does that mean that we're kind of like the ants or the bees? Things where it's like you work to, like, a similar...
Yeah. I think it's because people go, we talk about, and especially, I don't know, now we've got all this, the online stuff has created a lot of divisiveness. Republicans and Democrats, especially the American system. I mean, it's the same over here with the Tory and Labour in a way, but less so.
Yeah.
Because people are willing to change. But there, it's like it's their football team. They've always supported it. This is my team. And there's no logical argument or no debate, no nuance that will make people vote another way. It feels like this is my team and I'm on it. And someone said, did a meme the other day about even, some of these Facebook things or whatever, people have said, this math problem, which is the right answer to this math problem? I bet you can't get it. And in reality, the real mathematicians would say, you phrased the question wrong.
Oh, really?
But everybody else is going, it's this answer. No, it's this answer. And the reason the person has put it in there is to create this divisiveness, even within a maths problem. So when you come to the pandemic and coronavirus, you can see how people it's like, let's make people on sides.
Yeah.
But I don't, in reality, the way that we've survived as a species for, all this time, we actually are quite a cooperative animal.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how this divisiveness gets pushed, political control or whatever. There's, with people just going, let's cause an argument. Let's put a badly phrased maths question and have people arguing what the answer is. But,
well, that's what I was going to say. Is that the real purpose of that question? Just so they can, is an experiment to see how people react to each other, or is it like not going to conspiracy theory on it? But it's like, if you get all of the people arguing over here, you can be, you whisper in both people's ears, they're now arguing, whilst you're committing the crime somewhere else.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to that. And just, let's make people look the other way. But I don't know, people have now got into this divisive way of thinking. So, why post a thing on maths when the real solution is not to argue about some crazy... I don't know whether it's in school. They've got this American system where you go, the times happens before the divide happens before the, I don't know. And for me, it's like, as scientists, you don't want to make mistakes. You put things in brackets. You do the brackets first, and then you deal with it. Which is why we've got to the moon, and why we can do quantum mechanics, and all these sort of things, is because we know how to put the maths properly. So why people have decided to do this, as a way of getting more likes, I think, of more people getting involved on their websites, they get more money from putting something controversial.
I suppose if you say, here's the problem, here's the answer, then no one needs to discuss it, which means they don't get the comments. The comments don't mean adverts are shown, which, I mean, that...
So we've got into this really weird society now where, in order to make money, you want to put content out there that creates problems, that creates a conversation, but more like they don't want a conversation, they want an argument, because conversation has nuance to it. What they sort of want is this team. What team are you on? In the trans debate, which side are you on? It's like, it's a nuanced conversation. I just saw someone today who's a male to female trans, just trying to support someone who's detransitioning, because this detransitioner is getting a lot of hate from the trans, and then this person is trying to say, well, you need to, if you become so horrible, why do you think people are going to be on your side when you're just saying you're an arsehole as well? So,
absolutely.
It's really interesting to go, great that you've supported someone coming out to detransition, and great that she was talking about the swimmer, and this person's gone from 148th in the world to first,
right,
by changing their sex. But this is 2 feet taller than every other person, and this it's good that it's coming from a trans woman, as it were, a male to female, who's able to say, but they're different. You're always swimming against them. They transition in their 20s, after their limbs had grown, after their bone structure, after they had a huge lung capacity, after they had a bigger heart muscle. It's like going, you've got to be able to say, there's nuance here. We can talk about that there's a difference between me as a whatever changing and you changing. I've been on hormones for 7 years. You did it for 1 year, and nothing really changed. So, but she gets attacked because she's not supporting, and that's what you just go. There's nuance to this. There is debate. There is, with everything. The way to solve things is to be able to hear what your opponent is saying, and somehow they've got some reason they're in that position. There must be something about their position that is right, so you try to pick the bits, and we're going to. I don't know. I just look at Parliament and I think all these people, they've done degrees in history, journalism, all things that are, it's like the past and it's black and white, or law. Where are the problem solvers in Parliament? Where are the scientists? Where are the creatives? So, we're saying about improvisers, we've got this ability to solve problems, and it feels like we need governments to have creative people or scientific people who are used to solving problems, because the world is full of problems, and yet we vote narcissistic, whatever.
Well, absolutely. Wow. But is it like in that sense, is it like a sense that if we say that people are going to cause an argument, rather than, because it brings engagement, whether it perhaps they don't ever want it to come to a conclusion, they don't ever want people to find peace or just get along and be happy and do things based on their own choices or whatever like this, is it a case that there are just certain personality types that will just always be looking for the way to, when other people might be trying to find harmony between each other, they're looking for the way to, we can't, they're almost a solution, we need to stir the pot again, I guess.
I think so. I think there's people that they want to be right and on the winning side, and it's their team thing. I think it's this confirmation bias. I think as a society, we need to be more aware that we all have our own confirmation biases, and we have to sort of be aware that when we're putting a point forward, that maybe that's coming from a bias rather than evidence, rather than from a fact. It's coming from where my feeling is, and therefore I will go around looking for things that support my opinion rather than things that make question my opinion. So for me on Facebook, I never block anyone or cancel anybody or whatever, because it's like Brexit. I wouldn't have known how the other half think. if I just put myself in a bubble of people who agreed with me, I wouldn't have known. And yet it becomes a big shock to go, oh my God. So it's really interesting to go, I don't want to cut people out because
Yeah, it's weird with all of like the social medias and everything like this, just because even if we now say that like, oh, Facebook is approaching 20 years old, or what have you, or that there was Friendster or MySpace or some of these other things that existed before, that it's still like a relatively new idea, and like they're evolving and changing, it's like no one really knows, like the Spider-Man quote with great power comes great responsibility. It's like we don't really know how to harness this
yeah,
thing, and when you consider that so many people, that there are the people that perhaps are really on the ball, would know how to harness it, and then there's a ton of people that wouldn't know how to harness it, but we're all kind of mixed in, and it becomes this thing where everyone is trying to learn some brand new way of life because it affects so much of what living nowadays is, and no one really knows how it's supposed to. We haven't worked out the guidelines properly yet. We're still trial and erroring them, basically.
yeah, yeah. And I think it is because our scientific knowledge and our technical know-how is far superseded our social abilities. So we still, I mean, for me, the joke was for ages. You know, we've got quantum computing to get devices, your mobiles, to such a small size that can do so much stuff, and yet we post things about cats on it.
Yeah.
It feels like the amount of human knowledge that has gone into creating this thing, and yet it's like it's being used for the most stupid of.
Well, it's also interesting when you think that it's this thing where it's this technology, and so people are doing stuff with technology, but the idea of interacting with other people via technology is it means that we're actually losing the skill of actually interacting with people. We're putting the middleman in, being the technology, to facilitate interacting with people, but in doing that, we're losing the ability to interact with people.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if how you teach status or whatever, but for me, there's one of the things to realise is that because a lot of people say, but this doesn't exist. I don't go through status battles in life. And like I say, you walk down Oxford Street, you're all going different ways, and yet no one's bumping into each other. And there's very few times you do that thing where you both go the same way,
Yeah.
and then you go back again. That happens so rarely. So people sort of know who should move out of whose way on an instinctive level without it being a bother, without it being a fight or a reason to fight. Except now, so this is how status sort of works for me in this micro level. But now people get mobiles, everyone's down here.
Mm.
So they're walking along the street now, and there's lots more accidents of bumping, I think, since that sort of thing has happened, that people have forgotten how to just walk down a street and instantaneously communicate without knowing they're communicating, and they get out of each other's way and move on to their life type of thing.
Yeah.
And now this thing, because this is becoming important. So it is interesting that I'm noticing people being less able to do real life things.
Yeah.
That everything is now, let's type, let's complain, because they don't have the repercussion when they're typing their hatred. You know, if you're out on the street using the same sort of language with hatred, there's going to be a fight. There's going to be something more physical that goes on, and therefore it's going to be more scary. You don't want to be beaten up, so therefore you don't say those things. You find other ways of saying things to get you the same end goal, but there's maybe a more polite way of doing it, or negotiate. And so, like I think we're losing the ability to have nuance. I think because now people are going, this is my team, this is my team. You go, it's not about teams. Think, engage brain. Don't just go, I'm one of these people. Because a lot of people will quote stuff to go, but then you challenge them on anything else. You go, well, you're stupid. You don't know how life works. You don't know how science works. You don't know how, and yet you've got all the confidence in the world to say that you're right on this issue.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, this like the interesting thing connecting it back to creative people or improvisers in particular is to create an anything improvised, but especially if you think of something with an ensemble in it, everyone can contribute certain things, and it doesn't mean that there is one person completely leading it, and it'll be like, oh, whoever contributes something good and something healthy and something useful, then everyone should enrich themselves with that. And then when someone else has something, it's not just about, well, this one enriched us here. It's like, oh, but that might be valuable too, I guess.
Yeah. And for me, this is why I like working with this improvising a play thing, because the people I'm working with always surprise me, because they're not thinking my thoughts, they're thinking their thoughts. They're seeing life through their things. So I make an offer from my position, and actor B does something that surprises me, and I do, oh, where did this go? Because I didn't know people thought like that. And then actor C comes on, and he surprises both of us, and you just go, there's such a delight in sharing that ability to make a story, because everyone comes from their own perspective, and therefore every character has a different perspective, and you can create some really interesting, thought-provoking plays.
Yeah.
That, socially relevant, that just come from improvising, without going, oh, we do a theme on this. You just, whatever happens. But because people are involved in that scene with that emotion, this thing comes out of their head, someone else comes out with, and you just go, wow, this is going into some really interesting places now. And for me, that's what I love, is it's teamwork. There's something that I'm sharing with these people and finding out new stuff because they don't think like I do.
Okay, so I suppose one thing, because like one of the things interesting when I was starting this podcast series, and this sunk, which like I haven't found a route into it yet, other than just to acknowledge it. Like when people communicated with me about it, I said, like, what are some things that or interest you or whatever to talk about, and some of the things you told me were quite interesting, and just in terms of how any of this may have shaped your development as to where you are today, or how much you're doing improv or performing may have led into some of these things. The one that jumps out to me most is you wrote, I became a god in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And
so
let's start there and work how it may or may not connect to anything else.
Yeah, so I was hitchhiking around the world. I got to a stage when I'd finished university and didn't know what to do. Loads of mates said, let's travel. And one by one, they dropped out, and I decided to go by myself.
Yeah.
So by the time I got to the Philippines, I'd been traveling for quite a while. And I don't know, the travel is not just an outer thing, it's an inner thing. It's like, I was going from 23 to 25 on my travel. So that, they say now that your brain isn't fully developed till you're 25 or something. So you're still... So I was like a sponge for information, and I was very open, and I was standing in the Philippines by MacArthur's statue, and I was looking the other way to everybody else, and I can't remember whether, I think they were looking at the statue and I was looking where the statue was looking.
Yeah, okay.
Type of thing. I don't know. It's like, and these people approached me, and I was wary of, okay, there was at the time a lot of potential drugging of tourists or whatever. So I was sort of a bit on guard when these people sort of said, okay, who you are, whatever. And then we started chatting, and they found out that I'd done some acting and whatever. And they were saying, well, we're performers. And I'm going, oh, great. Do you want to come around with us and see parts of the Philippines that other people haven't seen before? Because it would be going round off the beaten track, which I loved, and be taken to loads of little villages that you, at the time, I mean, I don't know if you probably can now, but you couldn't get to. So they're on some jeep going through mud roads or whatever, on boats across the. So they sort of, I don't know, they took me to some, party or something before, and they said, do you want a drink? And I said, I don't drink. And they go, oh, nor do we. I don't smoke. Oh, nor do we. So it became like, wow, everything was a sign.
Yeah.
And it felt, so it felt, it was life of Brian. Everything, it's a sign. I just felt it was in that place that everything I did fitted in with their religion. So they're basically saying, we go around and entertain people, spreading our religious message or whatever. So I went on this journey, and And they, unlike over here, my degree was astrophysics.
Yeah.
So unlike over here when I was leaving, people go, oh, astrology, what's your sign? You just, over there, at least they had the idea, astrophysics, they went astronaut. So I think, well, that's a better link.
I'll be honest, that's where my head went to first before astrology, because when you then said astrology, I was like, oh, is that what astrophysics means?
No, absolutely not. But that's the thinking. When you say astrophysics, people think, and you just go, oh, no. But there, you go, okay, so they go astronaut. Yeah, okay, that's closer than being in a whatever. But then they said, okay, so you must be, if you're an astronaut, you must be a captain. So I get what? So they started calling me captain, and they introduced me every time we got to a new village as this is the captain, and all these. There was when you go to the sort of tribal places, there's a very there's a lot of respect towards their elders, and there are certain ways of showing your respect to the elders, and the elders were coming and showing this respect to me, and it was putting me in this funny space anyway. And then they said, well, you can entertain as well. You're an entertainer. Come up with something. So I thought, okay, let's sing. What do I know? I did some, You Are My Sunshine, or something else. And they go, oh, that's a very special song for us. So everything, it's another side. Let's sing, let's dance, And then I thought, well, what can I do? Let's do some magic. So like levitation things. So when you raise your hands up for a certain time, you get the muscles train themselves, what are the signals are there, and when you put them up, I don't know if you tried in a door, down with your arms in a door, really push against the door, let your arms go down, they'll float up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what I mean. I do know what you mean.
It's sort of this physiological thing. So I was basically getting some people from the audience to lift someone by just lifting with their fingers, so like 2 fingers on each hand. So the 2 people, so they could get 2 under the arm, 2 under the legs, and they could lift somebody. But only after I'd done this hands up thing on their heads. And of course you're doing magic, you're going, oh, it's the power, and stay there for a while and pick up all the vibes, and you do all this stuff. And of course they lifted them up. And of course the people are like, it's magic. And suddenly I'm in this space now. So even these people, I don't know, because I was also saying, very much like the Monty Python thing, you're all saying I'm not, whatever that thing is, and it was like saying, please think for yourselves, stop following whatever. And so I was giving this speech about think for yourselves, and it was getting translated for them. I don't know, and then things started to happen that they even the people that knew I wasn't a captain that were taking me around would say, listen, my daughter is seriously ill. I want you to use your special powers to save her life.
Wow.
And that's when I think I've got to get out of here now.
Right, yeah, certainly.
That thing, I was thinking, if I become a narcissist, I could be a Scientologist, I could have been L. Ron Hubbard, I could have been whatever.
What is it, like Apocalypse Now, where Marlon Brando ends up sat in a hut and he's worshipped or something like this?
Yeah, so it's a really strange experience, and to realize how it can happen to you, because people want to believe. And so I was able to come back and see how people, wanted to believe in the politicians. You put a white coat on and people want to believe you can heal or whatever. So there's a huge thing to take a back seat that I actually don't want this fame. You can see a lot of people, for me, getting the fame. Yeah. And it's like they haven't got enough people to say, listen, you're not really a god.
Yeah.
You need mates who, that's what is great, to get back, after being a god, to get back to Britain, and people go, oh, you fucking wanker.
I mean, surely this is a bookmark, right. My summer as a god,
Well, Roddy Maud Roxby, again, he said, he's too old now, but he was saying at the time, he said, I want to make the play. Tell me when, write the play, and then I'll direct it.
Yeah.
But I haven't ever got round to it. But yeah, it's, it becomes, those things, like I said, they become hugely inspirational on you, because you're able to sit back and, you see with some more clarity about sometimes the desire to be this godlike person, and because I rejected it, realizing it's probably got its problems, but seeing that people wanted it, I don't know. It's something to go, wow, I can put this now onto society and go, oh, people want these leaders. That's why they're unable to listen to what they're saying. They're unable. It's like the Brown Blair thing. Brown was the person with policy, but he's a miserable git. So people just think, oh, Blair's got all this shiny personality, but sold us all out and sent us to war because of his belief in chemical warfare, whatever, the weapons of mass destruction. And so you can see that people want to believe in these characters and they deify them, and there's people who want to be deified.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's to pull out and go, oh yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, it makes me realise how the power of people, and that's why for me there's something about can we work together. There's a power in that, but there's also the madness, the power of people. Like when football violence and things happen, whatever, the masses of people, people just get carried away with something. And I think this is happening online now when people feel in this big community, they suddenly feel I've got all these people behind me. And so now people can't have nuanced debates about something. I mean, I was saying, I don't know what I was arguing about, but nothing to do with trans or anything like that. And I just said, we need some nuance in this argument. And someone said, you sound like J.K. Rowling.
Right.
And that was their response to having a nuanced debate. You've got to be on one side or the other. And
I mean,
I don't know.
In so many ways, like I really like this is, I guess, like Twitter and Facebook and stuff like this. I really, as soon as I see like a subject which feels controversial or something, I just recoil away from it so much because it feels like even if like what you say you feel is helpful, or you're trying to bring people together, or you're trying to, if someone's something's clearly wrong and you're trying to say this is wrong or something, you're just opening yourself up for attack, and I'm not the personality type to get involved in stuff. That's why I do improv. I like to do things happy, and I talk about like geek battle and I do all these kind of things. I am the one that, like, I find it fascinating, like learning about people, and that's partly why I've brought to do these shows back, to be like, oh, you became a god, this is something, how did this happen? Or like we still say about the astrophysics, and like how this then you go from that to becoming an improviser and all these other things. That's super fascinating. But when there's so many things where it just feels like people just get themselves wrapped up in something that just ultimately feels destructive, and like pouring energy into something that goes just into negative emotions and makes people miserable, I hate that stuff, basically. I just ugh, it's not for me kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's just interesting watching how society does that. So that's for me. I suppose, there is this in terms of my scientific training, and then wanting jumping from people go, why astrophysics, and then why are you an actor?
Yeah, that was literally going to be my next question.
Yeah, both begin with A. I don't know. It was it was one of those things. I think at school, I had a taste of it. I did some drama in my fourth year, and it suddenly hit me. Oh my God, I love this. I want to do this, and it was improv. Some of the first stuff we did. It took a long while through, because everyone tells you you've got to do whatever. My headmaster, I said, I want to be a comedian, sir. And he just goes, listen, your parents aren't rich enough to send you whatever. You're not doing English. You're doing maths, physics, chemistry. Why don't you go to London, where the theatres are, and do a degree in physics? And he started to read, astrophysics. And I didn't hear anything after that, because it was like Einstein, black holes, the universe, science fiction. It's like going, I've got to do this. Cool. So, I went to London, where the theatres are, and studied astrophysics.
Yeah, see, I suspected, or I didn't necessarily know that that's what you'd say, but as soon as you started speaking around this topic, it came to my head that, well, what came first? And if someone's interested in acting, there will usually be, well, but what are you really going to do? And then obviously astrophysics is the route you ended up going. It's interesting you say black holes, and again, this might be that I'm leading this conversation down to something where it's just like, this sounds gibberish. But I saw a thing on TikTok, of all places, where someone said that some space news, where some star or something had been observed being sucked into a black hole, and after some period of time, some light or something seems to have escaped it, which is, from my primitive understanding was supposed to be that nothing can escape a black hole. Have you
It's
heard anything regarding this?
No, it'd be X-rays or whatever. There's this thing of Hawking radiation.
Okay.
So take you on this journey.
Yeah, go for it. It's my fault. It's my fault if I don't understand.
No, so quantum mechanics, for me, because people go, where did the universe come from? How did something come from nothing? And yet, daily in quantum mechanics, we're seeing particles come from nothing, float around a bit, hit each other, destroy each other, and go back to nothing. So these things, it's like something's coming from nothing all the time on the really smallest scale. And so saying, what happens near a black hole? If you've got one particle just inside the black hole and one out, the one inside gets sucked in and can never crash into it and destroy the other one. So you've got this particle that's going to be given out of a black hole.
Yeah.
So something will come out, and there's energy things going on. So
that, you explain that a lot simpler than what I envisaged could possibly be possible. But there you go. No, that's super. So, okay, so let me ask you another question. I'm not trying to test you or something here, but it is just a fascinating thing. So the universe goes on forever, right? Or does it? Or, what's the thought on that?
We don't know, because there's a limit to the observable universe. There's a limit to what we can and what we will ever be able to see.
Yeah.
Test. We don't know what went on behind, because the universe is expanding, and because light has a finite time to get to us. The galaxies that are at the edge of the expansion where we can see them, the light has taken all this time to get to us, right from early near the beginning of creation or whatever. This stuff, we see the light, but there's going to be a point when that, because it's expanding and it expands exponentially, that's soon going to disappear, and we will never see that again. So there are things beyond what we can see that have already gone, that we will never, the speed of light will never, from leaving the star, will never ever reach us, because the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
Because the universe, it's like the space between things can expand faster than light, but things themselves can't travel faster than light.
So if I was to put it in a really layman's term, if you were on a train and you were and there was a person that the train was stopped and you were at the window and they ran to the far side of the train, they wouldn't be able to run back to the window to see you because the train's moved too fast away.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's.
I'm not going to lie. I'm quite proud of that one from me.
I've got it. Good. Yeah. So in terms of what is the edge of the universe, the edge of the universe is what we can legitimately see or potentially get information from. But in terms of we can plot backwards in a way to say, okay, this is when the Big Bang was, and if everything expanded at that rate, there's going to be loads of stuff that's beyond what we can ever see. And there is is it infinite or not? I don't know.
Okay, no. Okay, so we can begin to wrap things up, but just off the back of that, this way of thinking and this curiosity and all this, and this is obviously very science-based, and then the creativity and everything of acting, performing, directing, and going back to what we were saying right at the beginning of this conversation about looking at something and problem solving things. How much do you feel that your interest in the science, and you say about lighting, and look, you've even got some lens flare coming in at the side here, just a little bit of light. There you go. Yeah, playing with the lighting and everything. How much do you feel that, again, and with wrapping everything up here, it's all tying in nicely. We're in answering the question of what makes up you and everything like this. How much of your curiosity or breaking down the science of things, that when you see things on stage or when you're creating a show, when you're working with new technology and stuff, how much does all of this play in together? What am I trying to ask? For what is your personality, I guess, into problem solving things, and how much does these influence on each other, I guess?
Yeah, I because I do both, it feels I've been really lucky to be creative and not get sucked up with all the woo-woo, because I'm a scientist, but I'm a scientist but isn't so stuck in the whatever that I'm able to be creative. A lot of top scientists like Feynman and whatever were incredibly creative people, I think, to make that leap in thinking to come up with a new discovery. So I think I don't know which is first in terms of the curiosity, but I feel that that's part of me, that I want to find out these new things. For a while, certain things can satisfy me, but after a while, I start to, I don't know, there's something else. I want to find out something new. So knowing how the universe worked, it's like, okay, let's get into acting, because then that's like how people work. And then it's, for neuroscience, it's okay, well, how are we people? So it becomes, okay, there's another layer to dig into. How do we get the feelings that we get? How do we become I? So this, and it's a feedback loop. So maybe this is the thing that as an answer, it's a feedback loop. I think one feeds back on the other. The way we get information from our skin, from our hearing, from our eyes, all is within the same body, which the brain processes as I. Therefore, I feel this thing, I see this thing. So yeah, so I think maybe there's a feedback loop between the scientific way of thinking about it and the creative way of. So for my teaching, I don't know, I absorb stuff, goes through the scientific analysis, and then I put it out in communication, which is an artistic thing. And then people give me artistic things back, and it goes through some scientific analysis. And so, it's maybe curiosity. If people could be curious, why only be? I don't know why we split between arts and sciences. Why that is? Because it feels like if you're curious, let both. There's an interaction between both.
Well, absolutely, and just like the very nature of what you're saying about using technology and things that can then add to creativity and add to performance in ways that perhaps haven't been done before. Like I remember that because it was only a few weeks ago when we had you for a guest show, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you were saying that you were now experimenting with some of the things we've taken from the Zoom era and putting it into in real life.
Yeah, we did a German team in Bremen, basically made a lot of connections around the world, and we basically put screens. So we went into real life. I went down to Clapham at the Omnibus Theatre. We put a screen in, and we were able to film the Germans doing acting on the screen, and while my actors were on stage on the other half of the thing. And then we were being filmed, so our English actors were in Bremen on their half of the screen. So there's something that we were mixing in real life, plus all the video tech, so that people could hear and see what the other half are doing. And then how do you react with that? And I think, so we were playing drama in my style of stuff, but some people did some comic stuff, and I think they decided to do pushing against a wall. So they had people, I don't know, so you could see the screen, one half of the actors are pushing a screen, the other part are pushing their screen. It looked like people pushing a wall. So some people were doing comedy, some people did some virtual stuff. So it's, that they've been playing around with a lot of what the computers can do. And I don't know, so there's there's all this experimentation, and it feels, wow, that's really good. We don't have to say goodbye to basically the pandemic's sort of gone and maybe back, but it doesn't mean we should throw out everything we've gained from this online stuff. We're reaching around the world now, so it's fascinating to do. People from Taiwan or Colombia or the UK and Germany, we're just all connected. Why not do a show together? And that feels such a great
I think it's still going to be like this. Same as what I was saying about social media, is that it's going to be a period of experimenting about what can we do, what really works. And I've noticed that so many technology things sometimes appear, they perhaps don't catch on, they go away and they come back perhaps again better. And the easy example of that is 3D cinema, 3D television, where it used to be the red and the blue and stuff like this, in Jaws in 3D, and then 10 years ago with Avatar and that, and 3D cinema has all but gone away unless you're at perhaps IMAX or something like that. And it was because perhaps televisions didn't work, so that you couldn't really get that experience, and it's gone away, but it'll come back again. And I suppose the next evolution of it is the virtual reality headsets, and I think at some point performance, that it might already be happening there. It's not something I know enough about, but I know that you can go into a room and you'll have your avatar and you can interact with each other, but it's like, at what point is the adoption of that technology enough so that you can have people be there, and so it's like you're in the virtual theatre, as some people are there as audience and some people can get up on the stage, and I think that's all coming as well at some point.
Yeah, I'm interested in where things go, because in terms of improvising on film, there's another guy that I know. He's just got a doctorate in improvisation, because he's been looking at it from the camera point of view.
Yeah.
So there's a sense that can the cameramen improvise? Because then it's something really interesting. How do you formulate something where the actors are improvising, but so the camera? So it's not like the Mike Leigh stuff. People rehearse, they improvise, and then they have to fix it for the camera and the lighting.
Yeah.
Like, what if you go through the dogma rules where you don't have you've got to use natural lighting or whatever, but then the cameraman is an improviser, so they might not be they might decide not to follow the actor, but to focus on something else, or I don't know what the sound man. Where did they go? And then, so how do you work with that? That feels to me like a really exciting prospect to understand. How you can do a swipe or something. You walk past the camera, boom, you've got a place where you could cut or something, or because the actor is aware of, okay, I'm improvising now with the cameraman and not just improvising with the other actor. So I don't know. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of richness from tech. I mean, it is so people behind the camera can now start to play as well.
Yeah.
The world opens up amazingly.
Absolutely. Right, Mark. At that point, I thank you so much for the last hour or so. What have you got coming up? Where can people find you? Anything you'd like to plug?
Nothing coming up immediately. But yeah, you can find me Facebook, Mark Phoenix Glasses, or Third Person. What is it? Third Person Theatre Company.wordpress. .co, whatever. So, but it's slightly out of date stuff. But yeah, I mean, if people feel they want to get into some dramatic improv and stuff, use Facebook to contact me or something. Then it's
awesome. So, audience, whether you are watching or listening, please take a moment to smash that subscribe button on youtube.com/extremeimprov. If you're listening, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google, or whatever, make sure you subscribe there. Give a like to the Facebook page, Extreme Improv, or XStreamed. They both are out there. I've got many social media accounts, so look them up. You'll be able to find them. Go to extreme.tv. It has all of the links to all of the places and all of the shows there. So until next time, stay safe, always stay extremed, and ciao for now. Boom, and we're off the air.